Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my eyes before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I did some on exploring outside today. Oh my goodness, I walked 12 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles, but I left early this afternoon and I didn't get home till early this evening. And I am begged. It was a beautiful day. We set a record temperature high today for Winnipeg, Manitoba. If you don't know where I live, it is in Canada, and we have had such a heat spell here, and I wouldn't have done myself any justice if I didn't spend some outside time today, and that's exactly what I did. I came home. I am pleasantly pooped, pleasantly pooped, but happy to be here. Okay, you guys, this week we had this word freedom, right? It's our 26th word. 26th word. That's halfway almost. Next week we will be exactly halfway through our 54 powerful words, and I'm really curious as to um what this is going to produce at the end of it. I don't think I put enough thought into exactly what I was doing on. Oh, that'll be a good idea. Let's put down a whole bunch of powerful words and let's put a deck together and we'll spend a whole week talking about each word just to find out, like, oh my goodness, did we work on each word? Like, maybe I didn't bring to my live show each day the true depth of what I was delving into, and I suspect that when I make the deck each week it'll be a different word for whoever, right? It's shadow work. It's exactly what it is. It's some heavy duty shadow work, and we got this word this week, and it really got me thinking in different perspectives, in different ways that I could bring the conversation to the table. And I thought, well, let's start off like freedom, Cindy. When in your life have you felt a total sense of freedom? Something in the moment that you're feeling, and that would be that breakaway that I got to have from gambling. Grateful for the opportunity to. It was very painless, I have to tell you, because being thrown into COVID and being locked down the way we did, it kind of gave me a little bit of a head start in overcoming this addiction that I had ever since it became legal to gamble here in Winnipeg, and I picked up this addiction. I think specifically because I had an emotional attachment to it, because the addiction of gambling was my father's addiction of choice. And I guess, like father, like daughter, right? I'm assuming that, part of that attachment to my father, there was a lot of fun in it. There was a lot of camaraderie, because I spent my time with my father when he's gambling. I was his lucky charm. I don't know if I was, but he always considered me to be so, right? So I had an emotional attachment to my addiction, and I got so stuck in it. It totally destroyed me. It made me a liar, because I had a good paying job. I was waitressing and bartending. I was making really, really good money. And I was throwing all that money into the gambling machines. And we call them video lottery terminals here in Canada. And I became a liar. I shuffled my house bills around. I lied to my husband, which was the worst part of it is, lying and not being that partner that I wanted to be for him, right? Because I was just covering my tracks, and where was the money, right? And that's exactly what I was doing, is I was covering my tracks, and in that addiction I lost so much, right? The opportunity to buy a house, right? The opportunity to buy a vehicle, that opportunity to spend time with my husband, because those video lottery terminals became my friends. This is all coming from a Sam Fatkin video post that he put up today. And he was talking about addictions. And I thought, oh my goodness, and I'm at the same time, I'm trying to take lessons, but at the same time, I know the topic of the week, right, is freedom. And right away, what comes to mind is the freedom I had when I was able to realize that I possibly might have overcome my addiction to gambling. And I did that not even noticing. There wasn't a moment that I woke up and said, oh my goodness, right? I'm not a gambler anymore. It was just something, like I said, that I'm kind of grateful that, that, because I don't know if those machines were as so available to me as they always were, that I would have had that opportunity to be that strict with myself, to take another decent shot. It wasn't like the first time, right, that I tried to quit gambling, right? Lots of times, I get addicted to things, and then, when I felt like it was time to kick it, it was easy. I would just kick it. But this was one that I couldn't overcome, and in the end, it destroyed my marriage. It destroyed my jobs, because I had no interest in any of my jobs. It was taken away from my time in the gambling, right? In those coping mechanisms. And it was a lot of that fear, a lot of that insecurity, a lot of that self-talk that I had about myself that made it so that, right? No excuses, no excuses. It happened. And, I delve into why these things happen, but whether or not I hit it on the nail, I don't know. Because when you're in the grips of addictions, you become a little bit of a storyteller to yourself. And I'm talking about being a liar to yourself, right? You give yourself excuses, and right, it becomes other people's fault that this is happening, and you just don't understand me, right? And then you end up with your best friend, the machine that never, the house always wins. I remember my father saying all the time, the house always wins. But it never stopped him from gambling, right? Because there was always that opportunity that you might hit the big one, and that big one might resolve every problem that you had in your life, that might put you in a better position, that you could create something better, not just for your life, but for your loved ones, right? Because if I was a winner, everybody was a winner, right? This is the way that I was brought up in my family. We all took care of each other. If we were all in the slump, we were all in the slump, right? But when things were going good, things were going good for everybody, So when we talk about freedom, right? In today, in going for my walk, and we looked at freedom, and I was right after that, I had that lesson, the post that Sam Vatkin put out today on addictions and our relationship to our addictions, right? I had to take a serious look at my addiction to gambling today because my addiction just kind of fizzled out in all truth. So I had to take a look as to why. I'm just noticing, right? What an important thing I did for myself. What a miracle for my life. And it just seemed to have happened so easily that I almost didn't notice. I noticed. I did notice, but it didn't seem that it was so scary and so impossible in the end because I think it was because I brought on a good addiction, right? It was saving my brand, saving my YouTube channel, saving Prairie Dodgers, right? That desperation of doing whatever it took to make sure that no matter what, right? This YouTube channel survived, and well, we all know about the adapt and the conquering and the pivoting that I did, right? But it was the addiction, it was the compulsion, it was my desperation to keep this channel alive that truly became, right, the new addiction that replaced the addiction that had caused so much damage, right? This YouTube channel literally, I think, literally made it possible so that I'm sitting here right now, right? I think if I hadn't started this YouTube channel and it looked absolutely nothing like it looks like right now, I wasn't even aware of any of these subjects. I've been online since 2014. It has been a process and it will continue to be a process, right? We have no idea why things come across our paths, right? Sometimes it's just in that desperation. I was talking about it with my sister today. I went for a walk and did a whole bunch of little chores that I needed to get done, new passport photos because I got to reapply for my passport because, again, thanks to the COVID, we got shut down and I only got to use my passport once in the 5 years that it was good for. So I think this time I'm going to make sure that I apply for a 10-year passport, but I had to get my passport photos done. I wanted to go for a walk today. I just did little chores along the way and then just enjoyed the outdoors and the fresh air and the spring-like temperatures. And I stopped in at my sister's house and we had a really, really, really good talk, right? I'm moving myself forward, but a lot of these lessons were specifically made for me. They're right, they're formulated for me, but I have to understand that my sisters are a part of me. And even though, right, some of them are conscious to some of these conversations that I have. Some of them are not, right? And that's why they call it seeding, right? And so you just make those little efforts to connect in small ways and pass those lessons on that, right? You're not sure whether or not they'll do any good, right? And they might just be spit right back in your face when they're offered, but for our own well-being, right? And for our that guilt and shame if we didn't at least try. If we didn't at least try. And that's the best that I could do, then that's the best that I could do. And we were talking today, and now I got trailed off on that conversation, but it was something leading in to this topic. Oh, the freedom. She said, I went to visit her today, and she said she was watching a a movie, and it was like two women, and they were going down whitewater rafting. They were two sisters or two friends or something going whitewater rafting, and there was one clinging to the dinghy and all wrapped up in the ropes and everything, absolutely in terror, going down the whitewater rapids and down the waterfalls and the rocks and everything. And then there was me. She said it was just like it was me, the second character, up at the front, and she's whooping and smiling and laughing, and she's got her stick and she's maneuvering the rapids like it's an adventure, right? And I said that's so me, right? I said that is so me. I says, but that could be you too, right? If you chose it to be, right? But she picked up on a lot of the I said we were talking about how we picked up traits, from our parents differently, right? We are uniques, both of us in our characters. And I said, you picked up a lot of traits from mom. I picked up a lot of traits from dad, but you were around all those traits. You chose those traits to be yours, but it's not like those other traits are not part of you too. So if you wanted to switch it up, you know how to do it, right? You know how to do it because you've seen it, right? Because it was either in mom's experience or dad's experience that, right, that we become the people that we are. We get to pick and choose the traits, and I guess that's kind of what I did, right? And grateful that I used some good judgment. It was mostly out of fear, but right, good traits nonetheless. They gave me a pretty good baseline to get you here right now. But I did have that conversation, and it felt really good because I felt for the first time that she was actually listening. That not so much that she was listening, but that she was paying attention, because lots of times these conversations that we have, right, they're heavy conversations. They're conversations people don't want to have. Sometimes they're conversations people have never stumbled onto before, so it's a little confusing. Sometimes they outright sound right out of this world, hooey fooey, right? And so it feels really good that, not somebody that was sitting across from me was just absorbing, right, what I was saying. Like they were truly absorbing and listening it. Now, what they thought about that, I don't know. But, right, I had that opportunity to plant a seed. And whether that seed germinates or not, it doesn't matter because I've done my part in that, right? But it did feel really good to be heard in the little bit of advice that I was giving. I think it's because of the evidence in her life in the past half a dozen years, also, right? And like I said, sometimes you need a few times to be whacked upside the head before you have a realization, right? Sometimes it's so painful or so difficult and too much work that you don't even want to give it a shot. You don't even want to look at it. You don't even want to, right? Think of it as a possibility. So, freedom, pulling ourselves back to the main tree today, in looking at the way I felt today, right? Because picking up a good addiction allowed me to draw away from a bad addiction. Like I tell you, how bad it was I lost the most important relationship in my entire life, right? Through my own choices in allowing some of those negative beliefs to come back, roll back into my life, right? And I allowed that to happen because, well, I became the liar, right? I was covering up my tracks. I wasn't being genuine, and I allowed a compulsion to become a big part of my life, a big part of my life. So I'm grateful for my YouTube channel because, right, it it allowed me to get a little bit of a focus on something else other than gambling. It gave me a chance. That's all I needed was a chance, and in my choices, it would have dictated whether that chance was going to work or not, right? But I'd like to think if it didn't work, that if I chose to, that I would get another chance because I truly believe that nobody, very rarely do you get the first time, right? Trying to quit an addiction, be successful. I did it. I did it with cigarette smoking. The very first time I tried to quit smoking, I quit smoking. I have no idea. Like I said, it just happened, right? Those nicotine pads ended up in my Christmas stocking, and I was able to step down. And when I say step down, it was like the gambling. It just kind of sort of happened, and it was a matter of me making those steps. And again, you look back now, and you could say, "Oh my goodness, to be free of paying cigarettes are $20 a package now." I know people who smoke a package every single day. $20 every single day for cigarettes, right? Glad I quit long before it ever hit that $20 mark, right? But the freedom in it, I don't give it that thought because again, it kind of eased out of my life. So freedom. What do we look at now? Another example of freedom. And then there it was, right? The freedom that I felt when my father passed away, right? Because I always felt like I was such a disappointment and I was always trying so hard to please him, be a little bit successful, a little bit smarter, a little bit more attentive, a little bit more helpful, right? A little bit more special. I can laugh at it now, right? I can laugh at it now because it is in the experiences that we learn those big lessons, right? And it is truly better late than never. But that feeling that I had when my father passed away, right? Well, of course there was the grief, the devastating grief. There was truly a sense of feeling of freedom when my father passed away because it took away that responsibility of, right, being the good daughter, right? It took away that responsibility that I had to be perfect all the time, right? I always had to be on point. And so when I thought about that, I went, oh my goodness, freedom, to feel that freedom when the most important person in my entire life passes away. And then again, right, there's that guilt and that shame that surfaces because you're feeling that, right? You're feeling like the whole world's come off your shoulder. And then, right, to think of the same feeling when my mother passed away and that sense of freedom that I had there. It was a different sense of freedom, right? Because I always wanted to please my father, have my father be proud of me, right? And I always felt myself, right? Or realized myself was failing in that. With my mother, I didn't so much. didn't matter. She had her opinions about me already, so I wasn't looking to do somersaults or acrobats or anything to, right, to appease her in any way. And when she passed away, that incredible sense of freedom, it was freedom. Oh, right, it was that feeling of freedom, right? Of having to be the good daughter, right? When I didn't feel like I was being a good daughter, when I didn't want to be a good daughter, and I really truly didn't believe I should have to be a good daughter, but I was a good daughter. The programming, right? And then when my mother passed away, again, that sense of freedom, right? That total sense of freedom. That hypervigilance in those relationships were just as addictive as my addiction to gambling or my addiction to food, right? It was just another way for me to cope, right? And just another way for me to possibly appease a bad situation or, right, to gain somebody's respect or admiration or a little bit of affection, right? Freedom for each one of us, right? I think it's going to be different. But I think a freedom from something that has had you underneath its thumb is the most miraculous feeling that anybody could go after, right? So it's got me thinking today on this 12-kilometer walk that I did. I pooped. This 12-kilometer walk that I did today, that I was thinking, how can I better take care of myself, right? How can I better bring actual freedom into my life, right? Actual freedom. And what would freedom look like for me today? What would freedom look like for me today? So maybe we'll dig into that a little bit. Tomorrow we'll see. Uh, they scheduled me a little bit early this week in my shifts. So again, right, we're going to work around my shifts in the job that puts the roof over my head. But we'll be back tomorrow and we'll be talking about this word in continuation, right? And it is our 26th word, right? And it's an amazing word, this word freedom. I think next week, halfway through, right, it's something to reflect on, because that's a lot of words, that's a lot of delving in, and that was a lot of loose ties on topics that I thought I was already familiar with, right? But it's always just the perspectives, right? Just because I think this way today doesn't mean I'm going to think this way tomorrow, right? It all depends on the lesson. And you never know, right? And this perspective comes to you from your favorite professor, favorite your favorite psychologist in expert in narcissism, who is talking on addictions today. And it is, our addictions take away our freedom, don't they? They entrap us and they isolate us. They truly do entrap us, isolate us, and they take away from the mental, emotional well-being. And they also take away from our financial well-being, because a lot of habits are very costly, right? I'm just thinking about the waste of money. Oh my goodness. I put so much into those machines. So much. Incredible, incredible to be able to have that off my plate. And I can honestly say now that I'll never gamble again. I've got a taste of that freedom, right? I've got a taste of that freedom now. And it's been 4 years, and there were lots of things that contributed to that breakaway. But I have to say, grateful for the lockdowns that we had in 2019 and 2020 that gave me a little bit of a head start. Grateful for the mindset lessons that helped me to realize that, I wasn't doing myself any good. And especially when I'm brand building, that I shouldn't be focusing and making my coping mechanisms my best friends, right? That I really, when I'm breaking myself away from toxic, not just breaking myself away from toxic people, I'm breaking myself away from toxic situations, toxic habits, toxic addictions, right? It's all in the creation of the best human being ever. It is, or the best human being I possibly can be. That's not the best human being ever. Far from it. But I am a work in progress. We all are. Have a great day, everybody, and have a great night, depending where you are in the world. And we'll be back tomorrow. That's my good cheer. Bye bye.